Welcome into Wager Talk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Tony Mejia and Tony Finn of WagerTalk.com as we're talking Big Ten Conference action on Saturday, 3:30 Eastern kick in Happy Valley. Mejia, coming to you first. We're getting Maryland at Penn State, total of 59. We are seeing the Nittany Lions minus 10-point home favorites. Are you liking anything here in the Big Ten on Saturday?
I love the Nittany Lions in the spot, and I just hope it's not a trap line because it could be. But here are the reasons why I like them. I think at this point, you know that everybody wants to move on from Sean Clifford to Drew Aller. We saw it last week in Bloomington. Clifford kind of struggled. He got benched, but the Nittany Lions technically did have the lead, and then Aller just accelerated, and they dusted Indiana. Now, I think the same thing will happen. You're at home. Clifford's career is winding down. He's been a 4-year captain, so you have to start him. And then Aller is the future of the program. One of the top recruits in this country, and he can play, and you can see that he can play. So, if you're James Franklin, you have to throw him out there. So I think so long as Penn State can hang around, Aller can bring this home. I don't expect to be backdoored. And then there are issues with Maryland if you want to back them. Again, I thought this line was a little short with Penn State at home. You have Talia Tagovailoa coming off his worst performance of the season, 10 of 23 for 77 yards. Now, a lot of that was weather-related at Wisconsin because it was super windy, but I honestly didn't expect to see him back all season given the knee injury that sidelined him for a few weeks. And he said the knee is fine. Rakeem Jarrett, the top receiver Maryland has, a surefire NFL prospect, game time decision in this one. Again, would be surprised if we see him, but hasn't been ruled out by Mike Locksley. So for a lot of reasons, including the fact that Nick Singleton and Keytron Allen have done a really nice job as playmakers in that Penn State offense emerging, I think the Nittany Lions are the play. Hopefully it is not too trappish and they only win by less than the 10 spot.
Finn, coming to you next. Are you liking anything here, Maryland and Penn State?
I'd really like to take the points here in the Terps. I'm a fan of Maryland. I think at least early on in the season, I thought that they were showing signs of being competitive, a team that could compete with the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Penn States, should I say. And they haven't progressed like I'd like to see them progress. And for the most part, that might be on the defensive side of the ball more than the offensive side of the ball. The line's a little steep for me here. They're giving double digits, almost, two. In fact, if we see it reach 13 or more, then it's way too far away from me even think about Penn State 7-2, right? Penn State, a team that's gotten a lot of criticism for who they are and who they expected to be 7-2. Their two losses, Ohio State, Michigan. So takes them out of the title hunt. They're not in the title hunt. Not that this game isn't important. However, Maryland can play, and Maryland can score, and Maryland can score with Penn State. We've seen that the last two games with Penn State, both games, impressive. Yet there's some real holes in this defense, and that's supposed to be where they hang their hat. I'm not on this game at this very point when we're doing this taping. However, if I was, I'm probably going to be leaning to the Minnesota Gophers over Penn State, or Minnesota Gophers plus the points over Penn State and the Lions.
He's Tony Finn. I'm Drew Martin. We heard from Tony Mejia as well. Check us out, wagertalk.com. Guys, a good day to do so is Tuesdays. It's $2 Tuesdays. Top handicappers, top play, discounted to just $2. Check it out, wagertalk.com. Welcome into Wager Talk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Tony Finn and Tony Mejia of wagertalk.com. We got LSU and Arkansas kicking us off on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern kick. Tony, Finn, coming to you first. Minus 3-point favorites. That's LSU as the short favorite here. 64 being the total. Battle for the Golden Boot. Who are you liking? LSU and Arkansas.
Well, it's a big weekend for this Western Conference in the SEC. Let's put it that way. LSU, now the talk of the town, not necessarily who they, Nick Saban in Arkansas or Alabama, who they beat last weekend. This is as a tough road test for LSU. Everything that LSU's been the last 4 weeks, compared to what Arkansas has been in the last 3 or 4 weeks, it really makes a statement. And I think that line is correct. LSU -3 here. LSU is much more dynamic offensively than Arkansas. in my opinion. And I think that they're equal defensively. So I think 3 is a fair number. The way Arkansas has performed in and out the last couple 3 weeks, nothing compared to what I've seen from Jane Daniels and this LSU Tigers squad and the way they performed forward last week. They rank 7th right now in the January 4 rankings, should I say, at least who's going to sit at that table. And if I was in this room, and I'm not, you guys, but if I'm in this room and I'm considering being there, LSU Tigers minus the 3 seem the only way for me to go.
Mejia, are you in the room for the battle for the Golden Boot?
I don't know, because it is. They asked Brian Kelly if this is a trap game, which is a weird question because I understand it. Is this a game that is? It's definitely not a look ahead spot, because this is your toughest game, in my opinion, that you have to if you're going to run the table and win the West Division when nobody saw it coming. And you've already, kind of slayed the dragon in Alabama. So that's, I think, where they're going is, will there be any sort of hangover out of that great win in Baton Rouge against your arch rival when, again, you were a double-digit home underdog? And he said, well, it depends. If our minds are right, then it shouldn't be. And then you look at it from our perspective, it definitely shouldn't be. You're favored. And Arkansas just blew its homecoming game to Liberty in a spot where they shouldn't have been looking past the flames. And one of the reasons why they lost is KJ Jefferson dealing with a bruised clavicle. And Sam Pittman says he should be feeling better. It definitely seemed to affect him. He was a slow starter in the game, ended up with 284 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 costly picks. We've gotten consistency from him all year and from Rocket Sanders. And now we'll have to see them in a different role, albeit at home, as an underdog. And they failed miserably in that role against Alabama earlier in the season. And now we see a very confident LSU squad with Jaden Daniels playing really well, leading the all SEC quarterbacks, 619 yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. He started slowly and building a rapport with his receivers, but now it's clearly evident that they have it all going together. And LSU's top 7 in this college football rankings. You figure that Oregon or USC will slip up. Somebody else might slip up. So you're talking about LSU coming out of nowhere and getting to the SEC championship and potentially being a part of the Final Four. So huge spot for them. Now, you asked if I was going to be in the room on them. I think if I make a prediction on this game, if it's a client play, I think it's going to be LSU. I just have to believe that Brian Kelly can get these guys to stop looking in the rear view as to what they just accomplished and look completely forward, because the rest of the fruits of their labor are ahead of them. So it would be LSU or pass for me.
He's Tony Mejia. You heard from Tony Finn as well. Check them both out, wagertalk.com. Guys, a good day to do so is Tuesdays, $2 Tuesdays, the top handicappers' top play, discounted to just $2. Check it out, wagertalk.com. Welcome into Wager Talk TV. I am Drew Martin, joined by Tony Mejia and Tony Finn of wagertalk.com. Big 12 conference action here. TCU and Texas. Playoff implications, Tony Mejia. We're seeing TCU as the underdog, catching 7, 64.5 being the total in Austin. You liking anything here in the Big 12?
Yeah, look at TCU. They were top 4 in the college football playoff rankings, undefeated. And you're a 7-point dog on the road in Austin. The good thing for them is they've beaten Texas in 7 of 10 Big 12 games since the two played within the same conference, and they've executed 4 outright upsets. So they're looking for a 5th here. Really need to see if TCU's wide receiver Johnston is going to play in this one. He missed most of the last game with an ankle sprain against Texas Tech. It's a high ankle sprain, so those are tough to really come back from. And Max Duggan, I mean, he needs all the help he can get in this game. I mean, he can call his own number, but Quentin Johnson is by far the top receiver on the team in terms of being a 6'5" threat that can be a red zone threat, and you can kind of get down the field with. So they'll miss him if they don't have him. Zach Evans and Kendre Miller have been great running the football, so I think that continues. But we just saw a very similar situation with Texas playing at Kansas State, a team that has a great running back of its own, and Bijan Robinson took all the shine there. And that was a situation where I think K-State started too slow. They couldn't get any stops when they needed them most. And this is a very similar situation, only TCU has to get it done on the road. So clearly, huge game for both teams. Obviously, you've got Sonny Dykes in his first season in Fort Worth doing great things, and his predecessor, Gary Patterson, the father of that TCU program, now a special assistant at Texas, looking to trip up the Horned Frogs. That's an interesting storyline here. He'll definitely tell Steve Sarkisian and that Texas football coaching staff everything that they need to know to stop TCU in this game and get a victory. For me, though, I don't trust Sark in big games. I'm going to take the points.
Yeah, probably a big reason there. Gary Patterson on the other sideline here, Tony Finn, as Texas, at least, when I first saw this line, Tony, it jumped off at me. Like, wait, did I read that right? Texas is favored by the touchdown. What are your thoughts on it here, TCU and Texas, Tony?
I've commented on that when those of us that look at lines every day, probably, and I'm not exaggerating, maybe 50 times every day, we might reference the live odds board. When I see an opening line on the overnight, let's say a Saturday night or a Sunday night opening line, and it looks out of whack, out of center, off center, or just queer, and some, you know what I mean, in that way, is I really dig right in and look what's wrong, what am I missing, and if I don't find anything, I typically, like I said, turn and run and screaming like a girl. I don't want anything to do with it. I just don't want anything to do with it. In this situation, it's a little off. I think it was a little strange to me as well, Drew. But for the most part, I have not been playing on TCU all year. I've played against them once, and I thought it was fairly fortunate. Well, a lot of people say that we weren't fortunate. It was Oklahoma State. We're getting points against Oklahoma State. They lose by 3. I cover. Long story short on that is this Texas team is a strange animal. It's a really strange animal. If you like Texas, you believe that this defense is going to step up and be able to square off against the TCU offense. It's been stupid good, right? I mean, true balance in the offense, 200, basically 200 yards, I think, rushing to 275 passing, which is pretty good. That's in Big 12 play, of course, and that's outside of that. It gets bigger, broader, and more beautiful. Texas, listen, they're very similar offensively. If we break this down into defenses, where TCU not only has to travel, to Texas, to Austin, and the mentions that you've had with Patterson being associated with the Longhorns program, it can't hurt Texas anyway. A lot of people have said, "Oh, Patterson's been fired. He grew old. He grew tired. He grew out of touch with today's college football animal," and they put very little emphasis on it. In fact, I've had guys mention to me that they believed it was going to be a distraction, or maybe even a liability and not an asset. I'm not going to buy into that, but. And if you want to reference on the line thing again, you want to go to the computer simulations and those, if there's some of those you respect out there, you take a look at it and you're going to find that Texas is pretty heavily favored in this game as a home team. As much, I've seen some that had a 75% chance of winning. That would reference, or at least it would come close to being in accordance with the money line or with the line. My opinion on this is really, if you like Texas, you like the under 64.5. If you like Texas, you believe that this TCU offense is not going to play to its season average or its potential, or maybe even above that. If they perform above their season averages, guys, it's hard not to like the Horned Frogs and the 7 points. However, I'm also one that believe I have put a big emphasis on coaches, and I think I heard the other Tony say much of the same thing, and that is that which coach do you trust? Sonny Dykes hasn't really had his his late October, November skydive where he forgot to put his parachute on, and that happens almost all the time. When you're 9-0 straight up, 7-1 against the number, that's also difficult to go against. I'm not in this room. I don't plan on being in this room. However, if I was in this room, guys, I would probably be on the Texas Longhorns in Austin in this game for a number of variables I just outlined.
All right, Tony Finn, Tony Mejia, guys, check them both out, wagertalk.com. A good day to do so is Mondays, $9 Mondays, all plays from all handicappers discounted to just $9. Check it out, wagertalk.com.